Alright, so this is my presentation for Breakthrough Research, and my research question was, is public opinion and lack of communication between agencies such as NASA and the public causing the downward trend in support of space exploration? And the purpose and the importance of this question was that space exploration is imperative to technological developments. They've discovered things they've put satellites in orbit, artificial limbs, they've discovered LED lights, a long list of everyday life devices that we use and have impacted the daily life of everyone. And the main problem that I came across was that regardless of the improvements, 25% of Americans think they get too much funding, and 42% think they just get just enough as their funding continues to decrease year by year. And so some background information is that NASA's budget has been the lowest it's been since 1960 at 0.47% of the total federal budget. Back in the 1980s, when the space race was at the height of American politics, it was upwards of 4% to 6% of the total federal budget. So as time has gone on, the budget has slowly kicked space exploration to the side. NASA has stated many times that they need more funding if they want to keep up to date with the rest of the world, the Mars missions, improving their projects, and being a leader in space exploration. And without the continued funding, they're going to lag behind. Regardless, people are there's still a growing opposition to funding of NASA and the allocation of money, which is one of the reasons I chose to research this topic. And no specific study has been done to draw connections between what is causing the negativity and how it can be solved. So that's what my study is. Further background, this is more about what studies have been done that are similar. There's a study done at the University of Michigan that focuses on the lack of information and how it can influence public opinion. And this has to do a lot with misinformation and how people are getting wrong information from non-credible sources like your neighbors or somebody, your friend that says something, and they get their sources from an uncredible source. And this information kind of sticks with people because it aligns with their beliefs. And regardless of the fact if somebody tells them that they're wrong and they have information to back it up, people are likely to hold on to that information. And specifically in the study, they mentioned that to a democracy, this can be very harmful because it can spread and people are more likely to agree with something that they agree with than push their beliefs aside and look to the actual truth. And then a Turkish university did a study about how government is responsible with the communication of their constituents or voters or their citizens, and that they must use propaganda, political marketing, political advertising to improve public relations. And without public relations, the government can't build trust or tolerance with the people, and the people begin to doubt the government. And all this connects back to how NASA has a problem with public support, and that's where my study comes in, figuring out how they can correct this. My research, I used mixed research. I did qualitative research just to understand the reasoning behind the projects and what goes into the funding and the building of these different projects and why they need funding, and providing insight onto the possible causes of the lack of support based on what their interests are as an organization and what their goals are. And then my quantitative data, which is it's the majority of my research study, was a survey to understand the public opinion and connect it to how the decrease in funding is related to public image and using the data to pinpoint the problems. And so the survey I created was done to assess public opinion in space exploration and make a connection between the negativity and the lack of funding. And so the survey I did was a voluntary survey made available to seniors, freshmen, and faculty at Highlands High School. The survey was sent to all students, and they were to take it with their laptops that are provided by the school. All students had the opportunity to take the survey. It was open for 2 days, and they had to completely fill out the survey, and if they did not, it would count as an actual entry. The survey presented questions and blanket statements that had to do with their opinion 1 to 5, and they rated from the least in agreement to 5 and the most in agreement, and the survey was taken individually. The questions of the survey were as follows, and I won't spend too much time on these because we'll talk about them later, but if I refer back to them, we can. So the explanation of the survey. Each question was worded to compare how the introduction to space exploration affects the response of the public, or in this case, the students and faculty. So the way I did it was that I asked more generalized questions that were very broad and very encompassing, and then in the next question, or a couple questions later, I asked the same question, but specified exactly that it was about space exploration. So it took how people initially felt about the topic in general, and then applied it to a specific area so we could compare the effects. And as an example, for question 1 and 2, 1 was a general question, and 2 was a more specific question. If we go back to the survey questions, 1 asks about the importance of scientific research. So that was very broad. It could be about anything, medical, space, anything at all that has to do with scientific research. And then question 2 asked about the importance of space research, about importance of scientific research about space, which was specifically anything outside the Earth, as it says, and that was done on purpose, not to create bias, but to see the difference in the responses. And then the groupings were listed below. There were 6 groupings with different questions that were worded differently to give different responses. All right, the reliability and possible errors of the survey. The survey was taken unsupervised to maximize as many people as we could get, and as a result, any outside influence at the time could influence their decision, not giving the actual opinion of the person. So any friends, family, what's on TV, what they can look up on their own. There were really no restrictions, so they could look up just about anything to get influence of opinion. And considering it was also voluntary and not randomly sampled, this was limited to those only willing to participate, so you get a different group of people. So some people would just blow something off like this voluntary survey, while other people will, and so that definitely changes who you get, but it's the best I can do at the time. And then the possible errors. It's a very limited sample size because it's just at Highlands High School, and it wasn't across a multitude of schools and demographics. It wasn't randomly sampled, it was voluntary. The isolated community of Fort Thomas, which is from the white middle class, definitely plays a role in the ideology of the community, and then also obviously the demographics of the community change the outcome. But back to the results, I had 51 responses from the teachers, 82 from the seniors, and 86 from the freshmen. And so there was a total of 250 students in each grade, 75 faculty members in all. So that was a possibility of over 600 responders. And I got around 30% for the students, and then a much higher percent, closer to 70 for the faculty. So that again shows that it's only the people willing to actually take the survey versus those who just ignored it. And this is raw data. This was just the overall responses of everyone averaged together. I'll refer back to that if you need to, but it's just there to show the evidence of responses. And then these are the 3 graphs. I'll come back to this in some discussion. So the discussion, the first part of my discussion has to do with wording. So as I talked about a little before, the groupings were done on purpose to show how the introduction of space exploration changes the overall view and response, to prove that there is a negative response towards space exploration, regardless of other factors. So if you look at questions 1 and 2, I actually put the graph right next to it. Question 1 again is general, and it's much higher, upwards of 4.5, and then you introduce space exploration and it's much lower. All of the responses being lower than before. And so that just proved that there was a negativity associated with space exploration. And then the lack of information was evident, was the other portion of my discussion, because grouping 6 demonstrated that specifically people were uninformed about the achievements and about the goals. And so question 13 was worded to ask about if space exploration is a good use of funding, and that got a very low response, as seen on the left. And then question 14 introduced information about what everyday life things that people have benefited from space exploration, and that went up significantly. So this aligns with like the Michigan study, as in people are misinformed, and if they get the correct information, they're more likely to believe it and more likely to be supportive. And so it went up by almost 0.8 as an average. So lack of information is proven as a factor of negativity. And then Another aspect that I compared was the age group comparison. And originally I thought that the age group would have a huge influence on who thought what based on maturity and what generation you grew up in. And obviously the gap between millennials and non-millennials and then freshmen and seniors have different level of education and maturity. But surprisingly, the average response was almost exactly the same across all age groups. And that's when I'll actually go back to my graph. So all age groups didn't deviate more than 0.5%. Some almost answering exactly the same. So almost all the age groups are within that 0.5 range. And then you go in comparing freshmen and seniors, there's a very small difference between, there's not really one question that was really an outlier to that trend. And then generational differences, the same idea. There's really no question that was obviously a difference in perception, but the teachers more or less generally had everything higher, but that can simply be attributed to how the teachers thought. Alright, and then so I interpreted why that would be, why the age group made such a little difference. And of all the students in this entire school district, including the elementary schools, only 198 of those are paid tuition. Meaning that the vast majority of the students are all from this community. And because they're from this community, it's a very isolated community, as most of you know. And the demographics is 92.19% white in the schools, meaning there's a majority white in the school, and it's basically an isolated community compared to the rest of the communities around us. And then there was another study done how like-minded people generally associate with like-minded people, and so the people you're around really influence your ideologies and your beliefs. And so those that you associate with usually have the same beliefs. And as seen, the teachers and the students who generally live in the same community all have the same beliefs, so, and they're surrounded by each other. So that's one of the explanations for why there would be a general consensus across the board. And so my conclusion, there was a shortfall in publicity and public knowledge of space exploration. The results demonstrate that there's a negative correlation between space exploration and lack of information. And with the introduction of information, there was a positive response from the public. And this public opinion and interest needs to be addressed at the forefront of these agencies and the goals in order to ensure success. Otherwise, it will continue to follow this downward trend. And this can be applied to just about any agency or government, as in they need to address the public interest. Otherwise, people will lose trust and lose confidence in these different institutions. And lastly, some future directions. It would include sampling more diverse communities, both demographically and geographically. Skip over that. To determine how the different factors, the ideological influence can affect opinions. So across the U.S., there can definitely be different political factors and different community factors that will affect how this is perceived. And being isolated to Fort Thomas, it definitely minimizes the diversity. And lastly, the negative public image and this downward trend in support needs to be addressed. And with the focus on the support and the focus on public opinion and image, the funding and the overall public approval of NASA and future space exploration